Episode 1 Nabguana, Mother Earth, Awakening. The first tremor was barely noticeable. A faint shudder in the earth beneath Cairo, dismissed as a minor shift in the fault lines. But by the third day, the tremors had become impossible to ignore. The ground pulsed like a living thing, sending shockwaves rippling through the desert, shaking buildings, rattling artifacts in museums, and unsettling the animals in their enclosures at the Cairo Zoo. Out in the dunes of Giza, where the Great Pyramids had stood for millennia, the sands refused to stay still. The desert wind carried more than just grains of dust. It carried whispers, eerie and ancient, as if something beneath the surface was gasping for air. At first, scientists were baffled. There were no active fault lines beneath the pyramids, no records of significant tectonic activity in this part of Egypt. Yet the Earth, it was moving. Inside the seismology department of Cairo University, Dr. Nadim Farouk studied the growing number of anomalies with growing unease. His fingers traced the jagged peaks on the seismic readings, patterns he had never seen before. The movement was not random, it was rhythmic. As if something massive, something buried beneath the surface was breathing. "This isn't natural," Nadim muttered, flipping through satellite imaging from the past week. The sand was shifting in unnatural ways, forming concentric circles around the pyramids. His assistant, Layla, leaned over his shoulder, her eyes wide with concern. "Nadim, look at this. These tremors. They aren't radiating outward like an earthquake. They're converging." Nadim screamed, "Converging?" Nadim's breath hitched. He zoomed into the image, his mind racing. The movement wasn't pushing outward from a central fault line, it was collapsing inward, as if the desert itself was being pulled toward a single point. The epicenter was directly beneath the Great Pyramid of Khufu. By the time the Egyptian government took notice, the tremors had grown into violent, sporadic quakes. Entire villages near the Giza plateau were evacuating, fearful of a catastrophe looming beneath their feet. At dawn, a group of archaeologists arrived at the site, led by Professor Samir Hassan, Egypt's leading expert on ancient civilizations. The air was thick with static, the sky darker than it should have been. Something about the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Samir ran a hand across his brow, his eyes locked on the Great Pyramid. "I've worked here for 30 years, he murmured. "I've never seen anything like this." The ground lurched. A violent, unnatural tremor sent deep fractures spiderwebbing across the desert floor. One of his team members screamed as a massive crack split open beneath them, swallowing a section of scaffolding that had been set up for a restoration project. "Move back! Get away from the pyramid!" Samir shouted, pulling his team away from the expanding fissures. From a safe distance, they watched in horror as the sands of Giza began to collapse inward. The ground caved, spiraling downward into a deep, endless pit. But what terrified them more than the sight itself was the sound that followed, a low, guttural groan. Not the shifting of stone, not the howling of the wind. Something else. Something alive. Stay tuned for Episode 2, Beneath the Sands.